The top stories tonight in Wine News. The United Kingdom has expanded a controversial trial to mix and match different doses of COVID-19 vaccines.
The Philippines' total COVID-19 cases rose to over 900,000 with an additional 11,429 new infections.
Local government units in Metro Manila say they are now significantly lacking of COVID-19 vaccine supply. The 2-week enhanced community quarantine has cost the Philippine economy an estimated 180 billion pesos.
Senators adopt a resolution urging President Rodrigo Duterte to withdraw his recent order that slashed the tariffs on pork imports.
The government can now enter into a new mineral mining agreements as long as the deals comply with local laws. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Thursday, April 15, 2021. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news. The United Kingdom has expanded its mix and match COVID-19 vaccine trial to include Moderna and Novavax shots. Marvy Delfin will tell us why live. Yes, Marvy.
Harleen, as we wait for the results of the first stage of the COMCOV study, British researchers announced today that the trial is now expanding to add vaccines from Moderna and Novavax to assess how well people's immune systems respond when their second boost dose is a different type of vaccine to their first prime dose. While the Johnson & Johnson vaccine will not be included in the study as it is a single-dose jab. Experts from the Oxford Vaccine Group are trying to find out whether combining vaccines might give broader, longer-lasting immunity against the coronavirus and new variants of it, while having lesser adverse effects. They also believe that this mix and match approach could also offer a more flexible and faster administration and help governments around the world juggle constrained supplies of vaccines. More than 800 people are already taking part in the research since February and have received 2 doses of either Pfizer, AstraZeneca, or a mix. Starting from April 19, the study is hoping to recruit an additional 1,050 volunteers who must be over the age of 50 and have received their first dose of a Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine 8 to 12 weeks before being enrolled in the study. Although US CDC guidelines currently recommend against using a different vaccine for a first and second shot, Germany and France have already begun offering younger adults who received the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine a different booster jab after it was linked to very rare blood clots. Back to you, Harleen.
All right, Marvy, thank you for that live report. Healthcare workers in the country are urged to report hospitals which do not provide regular COVID-19 testing of medical frontliners. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
Hospitals can be held liable for violating the government's order to test health workers periodically for COVID-19. Department of Health Secretary Francisco Duque III refuted reports that medical frontliners have only been tested once or twice since the pandemic.
Yung ating po mga healthcare workers ay binabantayan po natin sila at ang mga ospital ay every 2 weeks ay tinetest po sila.
The palace, on the other hand, opens its line to any report of negligence for the welfare of healthcare workers.
So kung meron pong paglabag dyan, ipagbigay alam lang po sa DOH at paiimbestigahan natin kung sinong mga health facilities ang hindi nagbibigay ng mandated na regular testing for health workers.
DOH's Department Memorandum 2020-0546 orders all public and private hospitals and health facilities to ensure the availability of testing services for all their healthcare workers exposed to persons classified as suspect, probable, and confirmed COVID-19 cases. Priority must be given to healthcare workers who are suspect cases. Health workers may report to the DOH hotline 1555 or the DOH Complaints Handling Unit at dohpau.chu@gmail.com. Ray Pilayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the total number of COVID-19 cases in the country rose to 904,285 today. The case bulletin of the Department of Health, or DOH, showed 11,429 new cases. Data from the DOH also showed 856 new recoveries and 148 new deaths. This brought the total recoveries to 705,164 and the total number of deaths to 15,594. Of the 183,527 active cases, 96% were mild cases, 2.8% were asymptomatic, 0.4% were critical, 0.5% were severe, and 0.30% were moderate. The health department said 7 laboratories were not able to submit their data to the COVID-19 document repository system on April 14, 2021. The government continued to roll its COVID-19 vaccination program, but some local government units in Metro Manila say they are now significantly lacking of COVID-19 vaccine supplies. Asher Kadapan Jr. details why live. Yes, Asher, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, William. The number of individuals who have pre-registered for the COVID-19 vaccination program of the government continues to increase, but only a small fraction has been vaccinated due to scarcity in the supply of vaccines. In Quezon City, their vaccination rollout is only scheduled until Saturday, as they have already ran out of vaccines for the first dosage of more registrants. More than 300,000 residents have registered for the vaccination program in the city, but there are only about 100,000 individuals who have been vaccinated.
As to the exact delivery of the vaccines, just like the national government, we are still waiting for the exact time and date.
In the city of Manila, they are just finally exhausting the rest of the 5,000 vaccines they received from the DOH this week, which is only intended for 2,500 individuals. Almost 300,000 have registered, but more than 70,000 have only been vaccinated so far. The Malabon city government also lacks supply, having vaccinated only about 4,000 out of 13,000 registrants, while there are only more or less 6,000 doses left in their storage. The Marikina City is also looking to exhaust their supply on Monday. The Marikina City Mayor Marcelino Teodoro said only 30% of online registrants have already been vaccinated.
Paunti-unti ang dating ng bakuna. Tulad ngayon, may dumating na bakuna. Pwede natin magamit hanggang Lunes para sa 1,000 individual lamang. Kulang na talaga.
Well, the local government units have yet to confirm when the next supply of vaccines will arrive from the DOH. William?
Yes, thank you. Asher Kadapan Jr. reporting live.
The country has been dependent on other countries when it comes to purchasing vaccines. But the Department of Science and Technology says that there are local pharmaceutical companies that can be potential vaccine manufacturers in the country. Aiko Miguel has this story.
6 local pharmaceutical companies are currently in talks with the Department of Science and Technology, and they are considered as potential vaccine manufacturers in the country. Once the plan is concrete and start the production, they can make 40 million doses of vaccines for rubella, polio, HIV, and tuberculosis every year. 2 of the pharmaceutical companies target to produce COVID-19 vaccines. When all things are prepared and finalized, they may begin producing COVID-19 vaccines by late 2022.
These local pharmaceutical companies are trying to transition or trying to come up with a new product, which is vaccines. Yung iba doon sa pinakita ko, parang ang gusto nilang targetin, hindi COVID eh. Kasi remember, the DOH spends, I think, 7 billion plus for 40 million doses of different types of vaccines in our national immunization program. Lahat yun ngayon ini-import eh. So they are looking at the opportunity to start with the vaccines that are already well established. Yung iba namang companies dun sa pinakita ko, COVID-19 talaga ang kanilang pupuntiryahin.
The DOST has also an ongoing bilateral talks with 25 international manufacturers, including Serum Institute of India, with the assistance of World Health Organization. Vaccine manufacturing in the country may speed up, according to Dr. Lulu Bravo of the Philippine Foundation for Vaccination. The local production of vaccines in the country has long been planned, but this vaccine manufacturing roadmap of DOST and other agencies is a welcome development.
Now, the realization, and sana nga po magkaroon tayo ng vaccine manufacturing in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And what we need is a technology transfer. We have tried to do that.
DOST says that we lack virologists and vaccinologists in the country. They may hire Filipinos who studied and graduated abroad on the field of vaccination once the local production of various vaccines in the country begin. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Health experts warn people who have received their COVID-19 vaccines that they could still carry and pass the virus to others. Janice Inhente will tell us why.
There is no guarantee that COVID-19 vaccines can provide 100% protection against the virus. According to the health experts, vaccines can only give protection to people from developing severe symptoms of COVID-19. Thus, a COVID-vaccinated person can still be infected of the virus.
Sinasabi lahat ng bakuna na available ngayon for EUA ay wala silang kapasidad para mag-block ng transmission. So ibig sabihin, kahit ikaw ay bakunado na, even with your second dose, you can still be infected and you can still infect others.
Again, I reiterate that it may not prevent you from getting an infection, but it will certainly prevent you from severe disease and death.
In Singapore and Japan, individuals have been reported testing positive of COVID-19 after being vaccinated by the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. That is why the DOH reminds those who have completed their first and second dose of vaccines to still follow the health protocols.
Wala pang lumalabas na sufficient evidence to state how much time does these vaccines give as protection. Meron mga pailang-ilang mga studies lumalabas up to 3 months, up to 6 months, pero wala pa talagang sufisyenteng ebidensya at wala pang binibigay talaga na rekomendasyon din ng WHO.
Based on the evaluation by the Food and Drug Administration, Sinovac's CoronaVac vaccine has a 50 to 90% efficacy rate, while AstraZeneca can provide until 90%. Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For those watching our 24/7 live streaming on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook. President Rodrigo Duterte has authorized the lifting of a nearly 9-year moratorium on new mineral agreements in a bid to generate job opportunities and spur countryside growth. Under Executive Order or EO 130, the government may enter into new mineral agreements subject to compliance with the Philippine Mining Act of 1995 and other applicable laws, rules, and regulation. The ban was imposed by Duterte's predecessor, Benigno Aquino III, in 2012. The same EO tasked the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, to formulate terms and conditions in the new mining agreements that will maximize government revenues and share from production. The president also tasked the DENR to review existing mining contracts and agreements for possible renegotiation of the terms and conditions that must be mutually acceptable to the government and the mining contractor. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, stresses that the overlaying of the dolomite in Manila Bay Beach, or the Beach Nourishment Project, will continue despite criticisms from various groups. Dante Amento tells us why.
DENR spokesperson Undersecretary Jonas Leone says that the Manila Rehabilitation Project has been approved even before the pandemic, and once completed, it will benefit not just the government but also the residents. There are also some workers who earn for their basic necessities through the project.
Kung ititigil natin lahat ito, so wala na tayo accomplishment, wala pa ring work yung mga tao dito.
Jonas stresses that the 389 million pesos budget is not only for the artificial white sand beach or the crushed dolomites, but it includes treatment of water in Manila Bay, drainage system, among others. He adds, though it can be stopped temporarily in case of supervening events that prevent the implementation of the project, for now it will not be easily done due to contractual obligations.
The show must go on eh. So dapat ito nakakasana naman yan at meron din naman tayong budget for the pandemic din. So bakit hindi na natin ituloy na itong project? Maganda rin naman eh. Kasi pag na-rehabilitate natin itong Manila Bay, hindi lang naman gobyerno makikinabang dito.
The DENR says the entire project is now at 50 to 60% completed, and the full completion is targeted on the third quarter of this year. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines has ordered the deployment of additional Philippine Navy ships to bolster the conduct of maritime sovereignty patrols in the West Philippine Sea. Lea Ilagan reports.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines is not intimidated by the presence of more than 200 Chinese vessels, including 3 warships in the West Philippine Sea. AFP Chief of Staff General Cirilito Sobihana says Navy ships will continue to conduct maritime patrol in the area, and they will also send 3 more ships in the disputed island.
Ginagawa natin yung ating sovereignty patrol at mayroon din tayong resupply, reprovisioning of our deployed forces at different shoals and reefs.
Meanwhile, a U.S. Navy Expeditionary Strike Group fronted by the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt and amphibious assault ship USS Makian Island and the Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser USS Fort Real remain in the South China Sea. It entered the South China Sea on April 4 for routine operation. Philippine Ambassador to the United States Jose Manuel Romualdez said in his previous statements, American ships have been deployed in the disputed area to maintain freedom of navigation and protect the region's seaway. This is also due to reports of continuous harassment of Chinese vessels on local fishermen in the area. General Sobihana believes that the presence of U.S. warship in the South China Sea has an effect to the Chinese vessels in the area.
Alam naman ng China na we have an existing MTT with the US. Isa sa mga topic na pag-usapan namin, yung coverage ng MTT kasi lately napag-alaman ng lahat na there was so-called harassment against civilian Filipino boat.
4 Philippine Navy vessels have been deployed in the West Philippine Sea. This is additional to the civilian ships of the Philippine Coast Guard and BIFAR patrolling the Philippine waters. Lea Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Senate Committee of the Whole adopted a resolution urging President Rodrigo Duterte to withdraw his executive order temporarily lowering the tariff rates on pork imports, supported by 19 senators. The move also calls on the president to recall his recommendation to Congress to increase the minimum access volume or MAV on pork imports from the current 54,000 to 400,000 metric tons. According to Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon, Congress also has the power to terminate the authority delegated to the president in amending tariff rates through a joint resolution. Senators remain firm that the lower import tariffs and increased importation will affect the local hog industry and will result in loss of an estimated 3.6 billion pesos of government revenues.
Yes, we could not do anything because we are not in session now, but let me inform the Secretary that on May 17, when we come back, we will propose to the Senate as an institution that we withdraw this power of the President to set tariff rates because of the harm it has done to the hog industry.
The Pork Federation of the Philippines supports the resolution, saying that the expected tariff revenue can be used as indemnification fund to backyard hog raisers who are greatly affected by the African swine fever.
Ay sa halip po yung taripa ay na makukuha dito sa importation at magagamit sa pondo para pagpigil ng African swine fever, inalis pa at ibinigay sa mga importer. Kaya wala pong pag-asa ang ating industriya.
But for the National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA, the tariff should be low enough to help reduce pork prices in markets. NEDA Acting Secretary Carl Chua said the proposed imports will only support the local production to address the pork supply problem. NEDA estimates a pork meat deficit of over 476,000 metric tons for this year.
The temporary increase in pork will not kill the local hog industry, as imports would potentially account for up to 22.8% of total consumption. Also, as mentioned by some experts, imports will not flood our market since ASF has also affected pork production of many countries.
The Senate committee has suspended its hearing until further notice. President Rodrigo Duterte will deliver another public address tonight. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said President Duterte will share the details about his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin during his talk to the people later.
Mamaya po magkakaroon ng talk to the people ang Pangulo. Siya na pong magkukwento kung ano nangyari sa kanilang usapan ni President Putin.
The EcoWaste Coalition recommended acceptable alternatives and provisions in the regulation of solid waste generation in the country. Marvin Calas will tell us why.
The EcoWaste Coalition conducted a research on 5 selected barangays in Metro Manila based on population profile, solid waste management program, and its location along Manila Bay coastline. It shows that 825,605 kilograms of waste from 5 barangays on a weekly basis are dumped in Manila Bay, and 22.68% of this are single-use plastic. This prompted the EcoWaste Coalition to recommend a clearer and progressive policy on plastic waste management.
Dapat lahat yung mga waste recovery plan at iba pang plano ng gobyerno on the solid waste management ay dapat pinag-iisipan mabuti, should be accurate and science-informed.
Mahalaga talaga yung implementation ng policy with regards to LGU. Napatunayan ng research na kapag binibigyan talaga natin ng pagkakataon yung mga barangay to be accountable sa solid waste management nila, nakakahanap sila ng mga creative ways on how to manage their waste.
The coalition pointed out that the government should focus on development and implementation of accurate and science-informed National Waste Recovery Plan as envisioned in Republic Act 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Act of 2000. to revise the existing role of Barangay Ecological and Solid Waste Management Council from establishing to managing materials recovery facility, and to develop a policy on production, distribution, utilization, and disposal of single-use plastic, as it would significantly reduce waste generation. The DENR also highlighted the need to manage the sources of wastes and not on merely collecting it from the Manila Bay.
Mangyari dyan, magiging parang basurero lang tayo, linis na linis, sila naman nagtatapon lang. But we can address, if we can really address yung source nung saan nagagaling yung mga basura, I think that will be better.
Marvin Calas, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippine economy has suffered anew from the 2-week enhanced community quarantine implemented in Metro Manila, Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal. Janice Inhente reports why.
Many businesses and establishments have been closed while others have limited operation in the past 2-week ECQ in NCR Plus bubble. Apart from traders, up to 1.5 million workers are said to have lost their jobs due to the ECQ. Because of this, an estimated 180 billion pesos was lost to the Philippine economy due to the hard lockdown. But because the quarantine status of Metro Manila, Cavite, Rizal, Laguna, and Bulacan has been lowered to the modified ECQ, almost 500,000 workers have returned to work. Meanwhile, with the current number of COVID-19 infections in the country, Secretary Lopez believes it is not yet time to shift into more relaxed quarantine restriction.
Pagka ito po ay further bumaba ang COVID cases at bumaba ang utilization rate, ibig sabihin maraming bakante, ibig sabihin pwede ho tayong maglubag ulit to GCQ. Pagbukas sa GCQ, of course mas marami pang makakabalik na mga trabaho dito sa under the GCQ. Pero ito ho ay base ho sa estimate ho natin, kaya ho hanggang end of April itong MECQ, diyan po talaga natin makikita kung may mga improvement pa na mangyayari.
Lopez said the recent spike in the country's COVID-19 cases shouldn't be blamed on the return of workers because the clusters of cases in workplaces was only about 20% since the reopening of the economy. Janice Inhente, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Makabayan Bloc and a former advisor of the Interagency Task Force on COVID-19 calls on the government to be realistic in its COVID-19 response. Nel Maribohok explains why.
Former Interagency Task Force on COVID-19 advisor Dr. Tony Liachon describes the COVID-19 response in the country as elephant in the room that no one in the government wants to discuss. According to Liachon, it is impossible to reach the herd immunity at the end of 2021 as the country is experiencing lack of COVID-19 vaccines. The former advisor recounts his experience as he witnessed the overwhelming number of patients in the hospitals seeking treatment. Some of the patients died in their homes or isolates themselves in a car. These are some of the problems that the government should look into.
Kung sa Cavite puno ang mga ospital, hindi ba tayo dapat nangangamba na baka umakyat na ho yan sa buong Northern Luzon at ma-overwhelm na rin ang buong Luzon? Di magkukolapse tayo. Bakit hindi natin ma-recognize yun? It's a huge elephant in the room syndrome.
Makabayan Bloc member Representative Carlos Zarate expressed his discontentment on actions of the government to trace COVID-19 infected persons.
Higit isang taon na ang ating panawagan, 3 months testing doon sa mga vulnerable individuals and communities, serious contact tracing at isolation and treatment doon sa mga tinamaan ng COVID-19 at walang jumping the lines.
Dr. Ted Herbosa, a member of the NTF, said that they listened to many suggestions but the real challenge, he said, is the execution.
Marami din naman ang kritiko na wala namang magandang solusyon na naipuput forward. Alam natin, mas kasi nakikinig din naman kami sa mga solusyon. Kung may concern, ang may importante ay ating maitama at lalong sa madaling panahon. Madami din namang ideya na ibinibigay, pero kailangan din po sana ay magawa natin na posible ito at tuluyan ang pagbigay nito during the operations.
Herbosa reiterates that the government is working to contain the pandemic. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the people, we give glory to God.
The government will be hiring at least 5,000 informal workers to work as contact tracers under the Emergency Employment Program. Rosalie Conzex reports why.
Amid the COVID-19 surge, the government will start receiving applications for new contact tracers in Metro Manila. The Department of Labor and Employment, through its emergency hiring program, eyes to hire 4,754 contact tracers for the capital. According to the Department of the Interior and Local Government or DILG, starting tomorrow, April 16, applicants may submit their applications, and on May 1, they may start the work after their training.
Simula po bukas, open na yung ating hiring at ito ay magtatapos hanggang April 22.
Each contact tracer will have a daily income of 537 pesos for 3-month contract of service. The government prioritizes to hire those in the informal working sector, and applicants must be at least high school graduates. Applicants may submit their documents via email to the Office of the Public Employment Service of the corresponding local government unit, particularly the letter of application, barangay certification, and medical certificate. Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Quezon City government has started identifying existing buildings that can be transformed into isolation facilities. JP Nunez reports why.
3 public hospitals in Quezon City are now operating above 100% bed capacity rate, resulting to overcrowding of patients. These hospitals are Quezon City General Hospital, Rosario Maclang Bautista, and Novaliches District Hospital. Mayor Joy Belmonte said local government infrastructure and public school buildings are currently being evaluated and retrofitted into isolation or quarantine facilities to help decongest emergency rooms and other hospital facilities.
Ang tulong namin dito sa kakulangan ng bed spaces sa mga ospital, bukod sa pagdagdag ng tagsasampung kama sa amin pong locally run hospitals, ay palaganapin na po, padamihin na lang po ang isolation bed spaces po natin. Yan po yung more than 1,000 beds na pinangako ko po sa national government.
The UP Octa research team has seen a downtrend of COVID cases in Quezon City in the previous week. From 1,152 active cases on April 1 to 7, it decreased to only 1,036 in April 8 until 14.
For Quezon City, it's healing, It's beginning to heal. We hope that the situation in Quezon City continues to improve.
Experts urges the public not to be complacent amidst the decreasing COVID-19 cases, but strictly follow protocols to prevent further the spread of the virus. JP Nunez, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, Denmark is the first country in Europe to suspend the use of Oxford-AstraZeneca jab in its vaccination rollout for good. RK Lorca will give us the details live. Hey, good evening.
Yes, Mariel, good evening. Despite the recommendations from the World Health Organization and the European Medicines Agency, Denmark drops the AstraZeneca vaccine for good over suspected rare but serious side effects. According to the Danish Health Authority Director, Søren Brostrøm, in a press conference, Denmark's vaccination campaign will go ahead without the AstraZeneca vaccine. Currently in Denmark, 2 cases of thrombosis were linked to vaccinations, one of which was fatal after more than 140,000 people have received the jab. In the written statement by AstraZeneca spokesperson said that they recognize and respect the decision taken by the Danish authority. They also added that the implementation and rollout of the vaccine program matters for each country to decide and based on local conditions. Mariel, the AstraZeneca suspension delays the country's ambitious vaccine rollout plans, but the health authority said that the availability of other vaccines combined with the pandemic being under control at the moment meant the inoculation campaign could continue without it. And that's the latest update. Back to you, Mariel.
All right, thank you, RK Lorca, reporting live. Meanwhile, an anti-inflammatory medicine commonly used for asthma has been found to shorten the recovery time of COVID-19 patients and could potentially be used to treat patients early in their illness at home. Nina Bascon reports.
Research by scientists from Oxford University showed that the inhaled asthma drug budesonide can help accelerate recovery of patients over 50 by an average of 3 days, a development described by experts as a significant milestone in treating the virus outside of hospitals. Co-principal investigator in the trial and Oxford professor Gail Hayward said this is the first time a treatment has shown to be beneficial for patients in the community and that the acceleration of recovery time is significant for them. During the principal study, the progress of 751 symptomatic COVID-19 patients treated at home with budesonide over a period of 14 days were compared with 1,028 patients given the standard of NHS care. Findings showed that the estimated time to self-reported recovery was 3.01 days shorter for those who received the asthma drug compared to the standard care group. Professor and Joint Chief Investigator Chris Butler said that while only data for 28 days of follow-up have been presented, scientists will continue to assess the patients to determine whether the drug also prevents the development of long COVID. The NHS has issued new advice that general practitioners can now prescribe budesonide to treat COVID-19 on a case-by-case basis. Nina Bascon, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
U.S. President Joe Biden has concluded that it is time the United States ends the longest war with Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Biden added that the U.S. government will still continue the diplomatic and humanitarian support to the government of Afghanistan. Iya De Vera gives us the details live. Yes, Iya, good evening.
Good evening, Marielle. U.S. President Joe Biden concluded in his speech on Wednesday that it's time for American troops to come home and to end America's longest war with Afghanistan. The war between the U.S. and Afghanistan began in 2001 following the September 11 attack on the United States, and at the same year, the U.S. troops came to Afghanistan to prevent any further terrorist attacks to the country. But over the past 20 years, Biden said that the threat has become more dispersed and metastasized around the world, reasons why the U.S. cannot continue to extend or expand the country's military presence in Afghanistan.
We went to war with clear goals. We achieved those objectives. Bin Laden is dead and Al-Qaeda is degraded in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's time to end the forever war.
A diplomatic agreement between the U.S. government and the Taliban was inherited by the Biden administration. It was stated that the United States will begin their final withdrawal of all U.S. military forces on May 1 of this year. But Biden said the U.S. will continue to support the government of Afghanistan.
After consulting closely with our allies and partners, with our military leaders and intelligence personnel, with our diplomats and our development experts, with the Congress and the Vice President, as well as with Mr. Ghani and many others around the world, I've concluded that it's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home.
Biden ended his speech by saying that the United States had clear goals on war with Afghanistan. Back to you, Marielle.
All right, Iya, thank you for that live report.